Good evening. Over the last few weeks, it's become apparent that new legislation has come into effect compelling trade unions to hold a secret ballot of workers in their particular workplace before they go on strike. In other words, if workers at a factory want to go on strike, they have to canvass all workers in secret before a work stoppage is allowed. If they don't do that, the Labour Court could rule that the strike is not protected. This measure came into force after what looks like an agreement with business, in which business agreed to a national minimum wage for the first time in South African history. But the trade union NUMSA is now going to the Constitutional Court to challenge the strike ballot provision, saying it is unconstitutional. NUMSA is an affiliate of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Their General Secretary, Zwelinzima Vavi, joins us tonight to discuss this. Also in the studio, Gerhard Papenfuss, the CEO of the National Employers Association of South Africa, who I think believe that a secret ballot before a strike is necessary. Gentlemen, good evening. Thank you so much for coming in.
Oh, Stephen.
Mr. Vavi, I'm going to start with you first. Why, under this new law, workers would be asked, basically, whether they want to go on strike or not? What's wrong with that?
Look, for all these years, workers have chosen to exercise their right to ballot each other as part of their mobilization efforts, and or to decide that what they hear from the members is suffice, and they will then go on a strike on that basis. We find it very strange. In fact, we're not finding it strange. We know what this thing is about, that this is a full-blown attack on the right to strike. This is yet another attempt by the employers of South Africa, who have captured the state to do bidding for them, and in order to make sure that workers find it absolutely almost impossible to exercise their constitutionally guaranteed right to strike by introducing this amendment to the Constitution. And we rejected it for two reasons. Firstly, we absolutely livid that the employers are now wanting to instruct the unions, which are a closed association of members who belong to that unions, that they must amend their constitution, and this is how they must exercise their democracy. This has absolutely nothing to do with the employers. The employers must mind their own business, and the captured state must stop being a small braggy who act on behalf of the bosses of this country, so that the right of workers to exercise their hard-earned right to strike is frustrated. The second reason why we reject this is that it is introducing an administrative nightmare. No union, in fact, not even the Independent Electoral Commission, the IEC, that conducts elections every 5 years in South Africa, will have the capacity that is now required that the trade union movement should have, i.e., to ballot workers in each and every workplace every time they will want to exercise their right to strike. This is meant to emasculate the workers. This is meant to end collective bargaining and to introduce collective begging. This is about tying the hands of workers from behind, and then tell them to go in and negotiate with the ever-increasing power of the capitalist class in our society.
Okay, surely the people who support this would come back at you immediately and say, firstly, it's become very easy and quick to have some sort of app or some kind of SMS system. Someone will provide a cheap service to do this eventually. It won't take long. Someone will spot a gap. Some capitalist will spot a gap in the market. Let me just finish the main point, though. But the main point surely is that if union members do not agree to go on strike, there shouldn't be a strike. And what more democratic way than a secret ballot?
Absolutely. But remember, Stephen, the Constitution provides a full right to unions or even the employers, that they have a right to an administrative independence, to manage their affairs, to conduct their own business in a manner that they see fit and in line with their own democratic processes as prescribed by their constitution. It is absolutely wrong for the employers to now want to insist on the trade unions as to how they must exercise their right. It's not their business. It is the business of the members of the close association, and that's what the Constitution guarantees us. And that's why NUMSA, with our full support, and I guess the full support of the overwhelming majority of workers, is going to the Constitutional Court to say this is an attack not only on the right to strike, but this is an attack on the constitutional guaranteed right to administrative independence of the trade union movement.
Why suddenly are employers so worried about democracy in unions? Surely it's none of your business.
Yeah, you know, both Mr. Vavi and I was not at NETLAC when that was negotiated for very similar reasons. You know, the route to NETLAC is controlled by self-appointed people. But there's a bit of a misconception here. What the new legislation says is that a union must have a provision for a secret ballot in its constitution. And it stops there. It says nothing more. And the explanatory note says that if you don't have that secret ballot, it have no impact. We as employers can't go to the court and say to the court that since you haven't had your secret ballot, you cannot strike. The court won't listen to us because that's why I have these notes here.
That's interesting because I spoke to a labour lawyer on the SABC yesterday morning, Pukumaso Remule, and he was very clear. He said a labour court would rule that it was unprotected if you didn't have the secret ballot first.
No, it is. Sorry, if I don't mind, if I read it here, the code of good practice. On collective bargaining, etc. The Act does not, it says, the Act does not require the conduct of a ballot as a requirement for a protected strike of lockdown. There it says.
Okay, that's not how you see it, Mr.
But here's the point. The obligation to ballot flows instead from the constitution of the registered union. Registered trade unions and employees organizations that are obliged to comply with their constitutions, even though the failure to do so does not have the consequence of invalidating the protected status of the strike or lockout. So what was negotiated at NETLAC was actually, from an employer's point of view, meaningless. It was poorly done, but this is what it is. So that doesn't help employers at all. And but what it is aimed at, and I think what concerns the trade unions, is that since that is in their constitution, you know, I've been saying for a very long time that the violence in strikes is as a result of the lack of support by the unions. They have to force members to participate in strikes. And union members or workers, not union members, workers that don't, we know, you know, there are deaths in these strikes. People die. They lost their livelihood in these strikes. The levels of intimidation is extremely high to take them out in order for them to participate in the strike. And that the violence, that is my point of view, is the only weapon that was left. This, to some extent, is a bit of a problem for the unions, because any trade union member can stand up and a union member can go to a court and say, this strike wasn't secretly balloted properly. I'm forced to participate. I'm intimidated to participate. I don't want to participate, but the employers can't do it. And here's the documentation for that. So I hear what's being said. Now, what's been happening there has been a particular employer that went to the court to block a strike. But what happened there, the court said to this union, since you don't have this provision in your constitution, I can't help you. So the strike is unprotected. The moment so it's actually meaningless. The moment...
How could that be meaningless?
The moment
because that's exactly the point that...
No, I say from the employer's point of view, it's meaningless. The moment that provision is in the constitution, even if the union does not comply, it is not for the employer to challenge it. It can be another union member to do that. So the employers do not have actually protection here, but workers do have protection in this
All right,
thing.
Mr. Vavi, you've been shaking your head at a lot of what Mr. Pappenfuss has said. So
I didn't see him shaking his head.
Because the notes that he has are wrong and they are not the law.
the law is that
The
you have
law,
to have a ballot first.
What he is mistaking and what the many employers, and including the people who negotiated this piece of law, had not done is to do a proper work. They didn't scrap a section 67 of the LRA, subsection 7. That was based on the arrangement from the time the LRA came to an effect in 1995, 1996, where it said, even if in your constitution there is a provision that workers will be balloted, the strike will not be stopped on the basis of you not exercising what is in your constitution. So there's always a requirement that unions must have a ballot in their constitution. We accepted that because even if you didn't exercise that, your strike will still not be ruled as an unprotected because you have not exercised what is in your constitution. They have now amended the law. They are now expressly saying in section 59, in the terms of the new amended LRA, that the trade union movement must firstly amend their constitution, which is the point that you are making, you're conceding. And when they've amended the constitution, the trade union must ballot their members secretly. And if they don't, they run a risk of having their strike unprotected. Secondly, they run the risk of their unions being deregistered. And thirdly, they run a risk of having their unions put under administration. Now, there can be no bigger attack on the independence of the trade union than some fellow sitting in some nice office, as the registrar have done in issuing these regulations last week, to say from now on, guys, I want to rule over you and I'm going to ask you to convene your congresses, all of you, amend your constitution. The registrar and the employers have absolutely no business in telling members of the closed association to convene congresses. Who's going to pay for these congresses and then to amend their constitution? That's not their business.
I'm sure the Labour Registrar will come straight back and talk to several situations where money has been abused by union leaders. We'll come to that. Neither of us are lawyers, so maybe we'll step away from the law a little bit. So Lindsay Mavavi is the General Secretary of the South African Federation of Trade Unions. Herr Pappenfuss is the CEO of the National Employers Association. We'll continue our conversation tonight around secret ballots before strike. Stay with us.